Ever overhear something that flips your entire life in seconds? This one starts quiet, but trust me, it doesn't stay that way. Watch till the end, and hit subscribe if you want more stories that actually hit. I was halfway to the courtyard with a tray of steaks when I heard her say it, not whisper it, say it, like she was proud. My marriage is a joke. Thane's not even my level. I stopped just outside the French doors. My hand clenched the tray handle before I realized it. Her voice carried through the glass, casual and clear, like she was describing an old car she'd finally decided to junk. "I'm just waiting on the timeline," she added like it was strategy, not a life. "Once I get enough, I'll flip it. Say he's unstable, take half, and walk away clean." Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. Maris laughed, all teeth and wine breath. "Just don't wait too long. He's boring, not blind." Then Noelle, flat tone, always precise, chimed in. "I'll handle the numbers. We'll make it clean." They were sitting out there under those string lights she loved, the ones I installed last fall like some idiot husband trying to create ambiance. Wine night, her ritual, hosted weekly like a performance. I used to think it kept her happy. Turns out it kept her busy plotting. I looked through the glass. There they were, drinking wine I bought, sitting on cushions I paid for, tearing me down like a task list. Larkin tilted her head, swirling the glass in her hand. "He's predictable, won't fight back fast. That's the leverage." That's when it hit me. This wasn't theory. It was a plan, names, steps, proof. They were rehearsing my humiliation like a launch plan. I set the tray down on the console. Not slammed, set. I'd sat through enough closed-door meetings to know the first person who raises their voice is usually the one scrambling. Then I opened the door and stepped out like I'd been invited. Maris's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Noelle blinked but didn't speak. Larkin turned her head and froze. She tried to pull that polished smile, the one that usually got her out of things. I didn't give her the chance. "Why wait a year?" I said. "Let's end it tonight." Silence. Maris stared down like her glass held answers. Noelle grabbed her phone like she had something urgent. Larkin's face twitched, just once, then steadied, measuring options, not emotions. I turned around and walked through the house without a word, grabbed my overnight bag from the hall closet, my laptop from the office, and the black folder I kept for audits and worst-case days. Guest today qualified. Behind me, I heard chairs scraping and murmurs trying to become damage control. But I didn't slam anything. I didn't have to. The sound of me leaving was loud enough. I didn't go back upstairs. I got in my car and drove to a quiet hotel downtown, the kind with a lobby that doesn't ask questions. I checked in under my middle name and took the elevator alone. Della, one of our ops people, who sat close enough to Noelle to see the tabs getting built, had been slipping me screenshots for weeks, always careful, always fast. Quinn, my counsel, had already set up a secure drive for audits and worst-case days. Tonight stopped feeling hypothetical. I stared at Della's last message until the screen dimmed out. Then I saved every file she sent to the secure drive Quinn controlled and pulled the curtains tight in my suite. I didn't sit or shower. I just stood there for a while, holding my phone like it had cracked open a second life I didn't know I was living in. That spreadsheet. I kept seeing the words pressure points. Not clients. Not contracts. Pressure points. Like I was something you push on until it breaks. At 4:43 in the morning, I dialed Rowan Pike. She picked up on the second ring. "Is this real?" she asked. No hello, no warm-up. "Yes," I said. "Lock everything." "Client outreach?" "Only through me. Freeze everything else." "What about Larkin's emails?" "All of them. Last 60 days, minimum. Preserve everything. Don't open, don't forward, just copy." Rowan didn't hesitate. "Do you want the staff list locked?" That was it. That was the question that told me I hadn't lost the ground under my feet. "Yes, lock it down. Track every export attempt, every permission change. I want a log on everything." "Done," she said, and hung up. I stood in the center of that quiet hotel suite with my hands on my head and finally sat down. Not because I was tired, because I needed gravity. I needed to feel something anchor me to the floor. By 6:30, Quinn had looped in 2 paralegals and filed the emergency paperwork to block Larkin from accessing our internal systems. "She's going to try to flip the story," Quinn said, voice like steel. "Expect a run on your character. Control issues, erratic behavior, temper. She'll say I'm unstable. She'll try. Let her. People who lie in a rush always leave prints." My phone buzzed again before sunrise. It was Della one last time. "Maris is pushing her to do something drastic. Noelle's tracking your travel, your schedule, everything." I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until the message felt like a bruise. That was the moment I knew Della wasn't guessing. She was in the room when the chessboard got built. She wasn't sending rumors. She was sending the blueprint. I went into crisis mode the way I did for clients when the ground starts shifting under a deal. I made lists. I categorized threats. I sorted contacts by risk. The difference was, this time it wasn't strategy for someone else. It was defense for me. Quinn called again after 8. Don't post anything. Don't text. Keep your circle locked and your head colder than hers. You think she's going to spin out? She already is, Quinn said. You're just not in the room to see it. I looked out over the riverfront. It was still. No traffic yet. No noise. The kind of silence that makes you feel like the whole city's holding its breath. I grabbed my laptop, opened a fresh doc, and started compiling the evidence into a clean sequence. First the spreadsheet, then the group chat, then Della's warning about the tracking. I didn't dress it up or add color, just the facts, because facts don't care about spin, and I wasn't walking into this empty-handed. Quinn was already on speaker with Maria Tran by the time I'd finished cataloging the latest screenshots. Maria didn't waste time with sympathy. If she's trying to poison the company, she said, we treat it like fraud, not like a breakup. Her voice didn't have volume. It had precision. Every word landed like a stapler on glass. While she laid out the financial exposure risk, Quinn texted me separately. Already retained investigator. Real one. You'll get the invoice tonight. It landed that evening. $9,700 flat. He wasn't the kind of guy who took pictures through dirty windshields. He started with filings, shell corporations, and any bank activity tied to Larkin or her known addresses. At the same time, Rowan forwarded me an email Larkin had sent around dawn. Subject line, wellness check-in, body full of coded poison. She wrote that I was struggling with recent stressors, that I'd requested a short mental health sabbatical, and that she'd be stepping in temporarily to manage continuity and client stability. Quinn didn't even flinch. Don't touch it. Don't respond. That's a tactical broadcast, not a check-in. She was right. It was dressed like concern, but under the HR spray tan, it was a straight power grab. A grab with time-stamped intent. Later that afternoon, Della resurfaced with another hit. It was an audio file, quiet and shaky. Recorded at Seth Donahue's, she wrote. He doesn't want to go public yet. Seth, Maris's husband. Apparently he'd been in the kitchen while Maris and Larkin discussed the project. He pressed record halfway through. I listened with headphones. No drama, no shouting. Just two women sipping wine and coaching each other on how to bait me. How to trigger an angry text, a defensive email, anything that could be weaponized in court. She needs him to react, Maris said. He's smart, but not cold. Larkin laughed and said, he won't explode. He'll push back just enough. That's all I need. I took the headphones off and stared at the wall for a long time. Around 7, the investigator sent back his first finding, an LLC formed in Delaware, filed under an address linked to Larkin's old business mailbox. The name was dangerously close to ours, 2 letters different, close enough to confuse a hasty client. Quinn's reply was short. It's not illegal, but it's not innocent. Then Rowan called. Halden Brooks just phoned me directly, she said. Asked if leadership's shifting, said he'd pause expansion until he knew who was steering the ship. Halden didn't chase gossip. He chased risk mitigation. His account wasn't just big, it was visible. His hesitation was the first real warning. I kept my voice level. We need to hold him. Rowan didn't offer false hope. We have one big client on the fence. That's the line we can't let break. Quinn started drafting the emergency injunction to freeze Larkin out of all staff and account access. Maria got to work pulling access logs, financials, and chain of custody evidence. Nobody was panicking. They were executing. Around 9:15, Della texted again. I can't keep sending stuff like this. Noelle is watching phones. Can we meet? I walked the message to Quinn, handed her my phone, and watched her expression stay locked. Bring her in, she said. If she's real, we lock her statement down before your wife buys her silence. Della showed up in the lobby of my hotel right on time, but walked in like she was breaking the law. Sunglasses on, plain beige tote slung over her shoulder, no makeup, no perfume, like she didn't want to leave a trace. She didn't speak until we were out of the public eye. I'm sorry, she said, not soft, not dramatic, just fast, like she wanted the words out of her mouth before fear took them back. She didn't look at me. She looked at Quinn. Out of the tote came a neat stack of printed chat logs and a small plastic flash drive in a pharmacy bag. Quinn took them, gave one nod, and slid both into her leather binder like it was routine. Noelle's been building tabs for a while, Della said. Everything's labeled. Client vulnerability, staff weak spots, even notes about vendors Larkin thinks she can flip. Quinn didn't interrupt. She just listened. Della talked fast, like she was scared her courage had an expiration date. I didn't leak at first because I was brave, she admitted. I leaked because I thought if this thing blew up, Larkin would pin it on me. I've seen how she rewrites things. I actually believed her more because of that. Fear sounded honest. Pride never did in moments like this. Mireya called an emergency board meeting for the next morning. No euphemisms. She used words like diversion, fraud risk, and sabotage by a sitting officer. It turned the temperature in the room to concrete. People stopped breathing through their teeth and started taking notes. Afterward, Mireya told me Jory Klein, one of the quieter board investors, had already pushed back on the call, said he'd heard a different version of what was happening. Larkin got to him early, Mireya said. Told him you'd gone obsessive, that she was trying to protect the brand from your outbursts. That was the tactic. Quinn broke it down clearly. You don't need a majority, she said. You just need one or two to carry the rumor. Doubt spreads faster than documentation. That's why we present facts, not arguments. That night, I recorded a brief staff video. Nothing emotional, just clear points. But I didn't send it. Quinn said to wait until the injunction was active so Larkin couldn't claim I was harassing employees or undermining her authority. Clean first move, Quinn said. Always. Around 10, the investigator reported back with a few more nails. Larkin's new LLC had already opened a business checking account, small deposits, early activity, one confirmed payment to a branding firm in Austin for logo work. That wasn't planning, that was execution. Rowan pulled new access logs. Larkin had tried twice to export our full client database, once at 1:12 in the morning, then again 10 minutes after her wellness email. Both attempts blocked. Permissions had been cut too early. I didn't drink or vent. I sat at the hotel desk, opened a clean spreadsheet, and laid it all out like a case file. I've done this for a dozen clients under fire. Timeline, intent, impact. Only this time, the crisis wasn't someone else's. It was mine. Quinn was waiting outside the office building, with the signed injunction in one hand and a coffee she'd barely touched in the other. She handed me the papers and said, "She's barred from systems, staff, and clients until the board decides. Now we walk in calm." The boardroom looked the same, modern, clean lines, cold glass, but everything felt different. Legal action changes the air. Mireya sat at the head with the composure of someone who'd already done the math. Halden Brooks had taken a seat by request, gray suit, no tie, serious face. Jory Klein walked in last, tight-lipped and unreadable. Then Larkin arrived. Late, deliberate, like a starlet stepping onto a set she thought belonged to her. She wore an ivory blazer, heels that clicked too hard on the tile, and a smug kind of stillness I used to mistake for confidence. Cal Rusk followed, tan, clean-cut, over-smiling like he'd mistaken this for brunch. Larkin opened first, all soft tones and concerned eyebrows. "I just want what's best for the firm. I've been worried about Thane's professional judgment lately, his need to control everything, the way he's become erratic." She used that therapy catalog voice, that fake, clinical calm people try on when they're performing concern while building a trap. Quinn didn't blink. She slid the injunction across the table, faced Cal, and said, "This is active as of this morning. She's officially restricted." His smile faltered. Larkin blinked, just once, like she hadn't expected the door to shut that cleanly. Mireya went straight to it. "Did you, or did you not register a business entity with a name deliberately similar to this firm?" Larkin tried to laugh. "It was just an idea, a placeholder. Thane's overreacting." I opened the binder and walked through the timeline. Della's screenshots, Rowan's blocked export logs, the LLC filing with matching structure, the bank account, and the payment to the design firm. I didn't raise my voice or look at her while I spoke. I treated it like a case file, not a personal betrayal. Quinn waited until I finished, then added the part Larkin didn't know we had. 2 letters of intent, she said, holding them up. Issued on her new letterhead, drafted by Noelle Stroud, recovered before deletion, signed by clients. Halden leaned forward. "I've never taken brand guidance from Larkin. Strategies always come from Thane and his team. Let's not rewrite history." He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice, but he looked at Larkin like she was a tourist trespassing on real ground. Jory cleared his throat. "Is Thane unstable?" Mireya didn't hesitate. "Unstable people don't run profit-positive accounts 9 years straight. This isn't instability. This is narrative engineering." Cal tried to shift the room. "There's still a personal marriage here. Maybe some of this falls under spousal privacy." Client diversion and defamation aren't private, Quinn cut in. They're actionable. The stillness in the room wasn't awkward, it was decisive. You could feel the weight of people realizing they'd been fed the wrong script. Mireya leaned forward and said, "Motion, strip Larkin Caldwell of all officer authority immediately. Offer buyout in exchange for full separation from operations." She took the vote right there. It passed. Larkin didn't argue. She looked at me like I'd stabbed her in the back with her own knife. I looked back and finally saw her without the charm, without the spin, just the calculation that had finally collapsed. As we walked out, Quinn leaned toward me and said under her breath, "This is where she starts making mistakes." Mireya added, "And mistakes leave a trail." I didn't feel like I'd won. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel hunted. By the second morning, the story had legs, not public legs, private ones, the kind that move fast in curated circles. Larkin's version, I'd been removed. The board had stepped in. The firm was in a stabilization phase. Bryony Fitch didn't invent that narrative. She just ran it like a campaign manager, first in her Pilates group, then in a ladies-only email thread that someone eventually screenshotted and dropped in my inbox anonymously. Quinn's advice was brutal and clean. Don't swat rumors one by one. Put out one clean statement and let it stand. She drafted a short, public-facing statement. No emotion, no drama. The board had affirmed my leadership. Legal action was in place, and any false claims would be handled through appropriate channels. That was it. "Boring wins," she said. "Boring tells the truth, while the other side keeps overreaching." Then came Larkin's next play. Bigger, dirtier. She filed for a temporary protective order. The claim was laughable, except it was filed in court. She said I'd lunged at her the night I left the townhouse, claimed bruises, claimed fear, claimed a physical threat, the kind of thing that gets a man branded before he even opens his mouth. Quinn didn't blink. "Where were you, and what proves it?" I gave her the hotel's digital key logs and the itemized receipt from the lobby bar, time-stamped, 0 alcohol, just 1 coffee. I'd sat there alone until midnight, answering no one. She nodded. "Security footage?" "Yeah, hallway, lobby, courtyard." Larkin forgot about those cameras. She remembered everything that helped her spin a version, but never the parts that recorded the truth. The video showed me walking out with a bag over my shoulder, quiet, steady, no contact. It showed her standing in the doorway like she was waiting for a stage cue. There was no incident. There wasn't even a word exchanged. At the hearing, the judge looked at the paperwork, reviewed the footage, then looked at Larkin like she'd wasted his lunch break. He denied it and issued a warning about false statements in court filings. She walked out stiff, not emotional, just rattled in that deep, silent way people get when they bet everything and come up empty. Later that day, Quinn got a call from Ari Salazar, Noelle's husband. His tone was clipped, calm. He said he didn't want to be in the middle of it anymore. He told Quinn that Noelle had helped Larkin draft offers to try and recruit 2 of my staff. He forwarded the drafts, time-stamped and clean. Rowan confirmed it on our end. 2 employees had received courtesy calls from Maris offering them stability during leadership confusion. We logged it, we added it to the file, we moved on. In the background, Della was getting squeezed. She told me Larkin and Maris had started hinting, asking around, sniffing for the leak. Della said she'd been iced out of committee events and quiet dinners. She said, "I don't care." But her voice cracked halfway through it. Halden Brooks called me directly. "I want facts, not gossip," he said. I gave him the truth. Larkin tried to divert clients. The board removed her authority. "Your account's been protected." He said, "Good. I don't do drama. I do results." That week, I stopped thinking of revenge as a war to win loud. It was about correction, quiet correction. Every lie she launched snapped under the weight of the timeline. Every label she tried to stick on me got pulled off by court filings and hard receipts. Quinn told me, she'll offer peace when she knows she's done. The next day, Larkin messaged me, not to apologize, to negotiate. The day after her fake apology wrapped in a negotiation attempt, Cal Rusk started calling Quinn like they were old tennis partners instead of legal opponents. Settlement concepts, he called it. Money up front, a public-facing joint statement, partial access to client relationships, like these were keepsakes, not company assets. Quinn didn't waste time. "You want to keep playing that angle, I'll have the judge read those letters of intent out loud in court. The posturing slowed after that. Seth Donahue came through next. Quiet guy, always lurking in the background of Maris's social life like a paid driver, but he sent over a notarized affidavit detailing what he'd overheard and what he'd recorded. He didn't write it like a whistleblower. He wrote it like a man embarrassed he hadn't spoken up sooner. Said flat out that Maris and Larkin had discussed baiting me, isolating me, smearing me. That Maris had described it like a strategy rollout. His statement put Maris in the center and nailed her to it. Mireya, meanwhile, built a clean financial profile for divorce proceedings. Not a spin piece, just a straight list. Larkin's paper title, her real-world contributions, the household dollars that had bankrolled her wine brand hobby, a subscription jewelry line, and 3 speaking tours that never made it past Instagram. We didn't call it fraud. We didn't need to. Listing facts is more violent than yelling, Mireya said. It's the kind of clean cut they can't stitch up. Then Larkin made a new offer, said she'd step away gracefully if I called the separation mutual in the official filings. Quinn shook her head. That's not peace. That's narrative control. Mutual lets her keep the lie, I said. Exactly. Truth ends it. The investigator wrapped interviews that backed what we already had in screenshots. Larkin had been bragging about taking half the company for months, not in legal terms, in cocktail ones. Rowan kept the firewall in place, logged every request Maris made to check in on staff, flagged every abnormal access attempt. She wasn't doing it because she liked me. She was doing it because facts still mattered in that building, and facts were on my side. Della reached out again. She wanted Quinn there this time. We met in the hotel suite. No preamble, no fluff. She slid a notebook across the table. Inside, Noelle's handwriting, timeline entries, task lists, a circled phrase that made my gut clench. Get Thane to react. I stared at it for a second too long. Seeing your name in someone else's attack plan hits different than a spreadsheet or a chat log. Quinn flipped pages. Would you testify? Della didn't answer right away. Her hands were folded so tight her knuckles looked white. Then she said, If I don't, I'm no better than them. She signed a sworn statement without another word. That's when I stopped seeing her as just the leak. That was something else. Larkin made one last play, planted a fake tip with a second-tier industry blog, hinting I was under investigation for hostile behavior. Quinn fired off a cease and desist within 2 hours. The blog yanked the post, issued a correction, and tagged it with a quiet retraction at the bottom of the homepage. Cal stopped smiling after that, stopped suggesting, started asking, What's it going to take to close? Quinn gave him one line. She walks with her personal property, no client contact, no cut of future revenue, and no more stories. And in the middle of it all, I started noticing something I hadn't before. Della wasn't asking for anything. No favors, no promises, no soft landings. Just quiet, unpaid honesty. And that's rare in my world. The air inside the company felt different 3 months later. Not light, but clean. No tension vibrating through walls. No fake smiles in the break room. No side glances when I walked into meetings. People had stopped asking if I was okay. Clients had stopped tiptoeing around calls like I might break mid-pitch. They were asking for strategy again, not stability. That's how I knew we were back on track. Mireya and Rowan rebuilt the inside the way professionals do. Tight systems, no speeches, no forced morale pushes. Rowan locked permissions down to a science. Mireya kept the budget clean and lean, even when vendors started circling for scraps. We didn't indulge any of it. Halden Brooks signed the expansion deal he'd paused. We met in person, short handshake, strong eye contact. He said, You handled it with no fireworks, just execution. That's rare. Coming from him, that felt better than any award. I didn't say thank you, I just nodded, and he understood. The investigator wrapped his final report. Larkin's Delaware LLC was dormant now. No deposits, no outgoing funds, just the skeleton of what she'd hoped would become her next empire. But the intent was preserved. The paper trail was there. Quinn kept the report on standby. We don't swing unless she makes us, she said. But it's ready. Larkin tried to rehab her image, called herself a founder who was squeezed out by a controlling husband. It played okay with people who only knew half the story and liked clean villains. It didn't work on anyone who saw the board minutes or the footage from the night I left. Della disappeared from that social circle like she'd never existed. She told me over coffee that she'd been dropped from a charity committee she helped start. The next week, she wasn't invited to one of those women's leadership dinners she used to attend monthly. She shrugged it off when she told me, but I saw the way her eyes stayed down. That wasn't nothing. That was identity loss. We started seeing each other in neutral places. No talk of what it was, Coffee shops, that deli by the river. One time we met in a quiet wine boutique and she barely took her hands out of her coat pockets. Not nervous around me, nervous about the world. We didn't call it dating, we called it talking. I wasn't confessing secrets. That's never been how I work. But one night I said it out loud. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theater. I watched my wife plan how to burn me down like it was a creative project. Della didn't try to soften it. She didn't tell me I was better off now. She just nodded slowly and said, "I know." That mattered more than advice. Quinn kept the divorce moving. Corporate terms already locked. No stake for Larkin, no access, no leverage. Just a pending signature and a line drawn tight. The emotional wreckage was still there, but the structure was stable. One night after Della left my place, I stood by the window and let myself just sit in the stillness. No alarms, no calls, no angles being played in the background. I didn't feel healed, but I wasn't on defense anymore. The courthouse hallway smelled like old coffee and wet carpet. Outside it was raining. Not dramatic storm rain, just a steady gray drizzle that made the building feel even colder. Quinn met me at the door, folder in hand, expression flat. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We walked in together. Larkin was already inside the conference room with Cal Rusk. She looked polished, as usual. Perfect coat, designer bag, but the edges were dulled. The confidence wasn't gone, but it was dented in places she couldn't buff out. She didn't look up until the clerk called us to the table. The judge came in and got right to it. The terms were clean. I kept full ownership of the firm. Brand, IP, equity, all of it. She got a fixed buyout, stretched over 4 years. There was a non-compete baked in, airtight, 4 years, full industry lockout, no contact with clients, no backdoor with staff. Cal tried to float one last addition. My client would prefer a joint statement, something that reflects mutual growth, mutual respect. Quinn didn't even shift in her seat. We're not co-authoring a lie. The judge didn't flinch. He just nodded like he'd heard it all before. About 10 minutes in, Cal asked for a break. Then again, 15 minutes later. I didn't need to ask why. He was trying to keep her from unraveling in front of witnesses. Larkin kept staring at Quinn's binder. She didn't open it, just kept glancing at it like it might hiss. She knew what was inside. The screenshots, the audio, the filed intent letters, the emails she didn't think we'd track. Her silence wasn't guilt. It was calculation breaking down in real time. When it came time to sign, her hand hesitated. Not long, just enough for me to notice the tremble. She signed anyway. Then she looked at me and said, "You didn't have to make it so hard." I said nothing. That line wasn't for me. It was for her ego. That was the closest she'd get to an admission. Not sorry, just surprised I'd refused to fold. Outside the courthouse, I saw Bryony Fitch standing at the edge of the steps with a takeout cup and a pretend smile. She didn't wave. She just watched Larkin walk to her car like someone watching royalty leave the palace after abdication. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her face said it. The social story had flipped. A week later, a letter showed up at my office from Larkin. 3 pages, handwritten. It was careful, curated, half apology, half revision. She didn't take accountability. She floated the idea of consulting for the company someday, like none of this had happened. I filed it. Not for revenge, for documentation. That same week, Rowan flagged 2 clients who'd been approached indirectly by someone linked to Maris. Quinn sent one notice. It stopped cold. That's what due diligence buys you. The kind of silence that feels earned. That night, I drove home to the condo I bought after leaving the townhouse. No soundtrack. No celebration. Just keys in the door and the sound of my own life. Finally mine again. 6 months after the signing, things finally held steady. The firm wasn't just functioning, it was breathing again. Mireya glanced at my calendar during a finance check-in and said, "Looks like your schedule finally belongs to one person, not 2. I didn't laugh, but I nodded. I knew exactly what she meant. We organized a staff dinner at a small Italian place by the waterfront. No speeches, no stage. Just real plates, soft lighting, and no agenda. Rowan raised a glass halfway through the meal and thanked everyone for staying solid when the noise outside the walls got ugly. I kept it simple. Thanks for trusting the work, not the rumors. Della showed up 10 minutes late. She walked in quiet, eyes scanning the room like she expected someone to stand up and say she didn't belong. She wasn't staff, so she hung near the edge until I waved her over and pulled out the chair next to mine. Nobody stared, nobody whispered. That silence meant more to her than applause ever could. After dinner, we walked to a nearby market and grabbed coffee from the back counter. She told me she'd left her position. Too much politics, too many people playing queenmaker. I took something smaller, she said. No status games, I just wanted quiet. I told her I respected that. I also told her I didn't forget who did the right thing first. We didn't call it a relationship, we called it time. Sunday mornings, then a few Wednesdays, then whatever days felt like they had room. I didn't promise what I couldn't deliver, and she didn't ask for what I wasn't ready to give. One Saturday, I ran into Larkin in a gourmet shop downtown. She was staring at a jar of imported olives like it had insulted her. When she saw me, she stiffened, took one step forward, then stopped. I didn't glare, I didn't flinch. I gave her a single nod and kept walking. That nod was louder than anything I could have said. It told her I remembered everything, and none of it held me anymore. She didn't follow. She just stood there like the air had gone out of the building. Later that week, Halden Brooks sent an email. New project incoming. Glad the right person stayed in charge. It wasn't a compliment. It was an affirmation. That hit harder than anything posted online ever could. Quinn filed one last notice that month. An enforcement letter on the non-compete. Someone tied to Maris had tested a boundary. They didn't test it again. That night, Della sat with me on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, coffee in her hands. She said, "I still have bad days about how I started all this." I looked at her and said, "You told the truth when it cost you. That's the part I live with." We didn't talk after that. We just sat there, quiet, breathing the night. "Hold up, before you click away, can I ask you something? If someone you trusted tried to rewrite your story and take what you built, would you stay quiet and play it smart like I did, or would you blow it up and risk looking unstable?" If you've got the hype feature, tap hype to support this video and help it reach more people. And please subscribe and like. It's huge for us and it's one click. Now drop a comment, even if it's just good story, or tell me what you would have done.